Using the Industrial Hygiene Exposure Scenario tool, narrated by Susan Arnold. The learning objectives of this module are to organize work and work tasks and document them in the Excel-based tool called the Industrial Hygiene Exposure Scenario tool, or IHEST. Identify environmental characteristics, for example, location and hazard controls such as ventilation. And organize work and work task hazard information, for example, chemical and physical properties of potential hazards. The home page for the IHEST is shown here. Our team, including Rebecca Burton, Dr. Jennifer Sommel, Daniel Drolet, and I, created IHEST, a downloadable Excel-based tool to facilitate the collection and organization of basic characterization information and data through 4 primary steps so that the essential information is included and documented in a way that will be usable. By collating the information in these steps in one place, the scenario information, basic characterization, exposure determinants, and exposure monitoring data, a more complete and comprehensive picture is captured, resulting in better decision-making and more robust risk management recommendations. The tool can be downloaded for free. The URL is linked at the end of this presentation. Because the data exists in Excel, the content is easy to save, update, share, and print. Unfortunately, it is not compatible with Google Docs. In this module, I'll demonstrate how to document and use chemical and physical properties to identify potential routes of exposure using the IHEST. I will begin by clicking on Step 1, Scenario Information. In Step 1, as shown here, the tool first walks you through documenting scenario information, which aids in scoping, purpose, and collating task, industry, contact, and other important project information details. When this step has been completed, I can return to the home page by clicking on the Home Image button at the top of the page. Since this is an Excel-based tool, saving the file on a regular basis is important as well. Documenting the objective for data collection is important for identifying which information will be necessary to collect and record, and for understanding the context in which the information and data were collected. Describing the industry, activity, type of product, and task performed, as indicated on the right side of this slide, are key components of an exposure scenario and are essential elements in the basic characterization step of the exposure assessment process, regardless of the objectives. Potential routes of exposure are often identified from this information as they are related to the intersection between work tasks, products, and the worker. Providing the company and contact details of the person inputting the information for this scenario is helpful for follow-up questions. Next, Step 2, Hazard Identification, can be found on the Hazard ID page. This step is part of basic characterization and is the first step in the exposure assessment process and describes the workplace, work tasks, and chemical, physical, and physiological agents that make up an exposure scenario. For the purposes of this module, we'll focus on chemical agents. Hazard types and subtypes are documented here, as shown in this image of the IHEST Hazard Identification tab. These may be known or potential hazards. Completing this page can be an iterative process, as documenting physical and chemical properties that occurs a little further in the tool could identify previously unidentified hazards. For Step 3, the material characterization can be found on the chemical agent characterization page. The chemical agent characterization page has several fields to define the chemical and physical properties that are necessary to evaluate potential exposure routes. We'll take a closer look at each of these fields section by section. Zooming in on the material characterization section, the chemical or chemical mixture is described using the free text field Description of Chemical Makeup. The material formulation or composition is described in the field directly below and is labeled material formulation/composition. This information is typically collected from product safety data sheets. In the contaminant form field, the physical form of the product is described. In the example shown here, it's described as a liquid. Properties that might impact the potential for or magnitude of dermal exposure through skin contact are described in the next field, properties of contaminant. To the right of these fields is a field that prompts the user to provide a reference source for these properties, which, in this case, is a link to the safety data sheet. This is a good place to remind you that this is a data entry and documentation tool. If there are entry errors, they will not be flagged. You will need to do your own data verification. The lower half of the chemical agent data section includes chemical property fields that inform us about the likelihood of a chemical or chemical constituents to evaporate and therefore potentially be inhaled. These fields are the temperature at which the chemical is handled, vapor pressure of the chemical or chemical mixture at that temperature, and the molecular weight. The octanol water and octanol air partition coefficient fields, along with the molecular weight, are helpful for assessing the chemical or chemical mixture's potential to be dermally absorbed. Beside each of these fields is a field for documenting the method or approach used to quantify these values. For example, if the value was determined empirically, then the reference could be provided here. Recording the source of information and method is important for data quality purposes. The last section on this page is designed to capture health effects of concern and occupational exposure limits for chemicals and chemical constituents in the case of mixtures. This information is also important for identifying routes of exposure.